Good morning again. So, for this time, again, we have another lecture on farm power and power sources. Uh, to be more productive in a day, power should exist. You should have the power and energy to do tasks, and that is also for applicable for agriculture, for farm. In each agricultural operations, it requires a work, okay, a work. Okay, so wag na natin patagalin, no? Let's discuss about this one. So this lecture is composed of general three sections. We have the farm power and power sources, the classification of agricultural operations, no? And common sources of power and energy. Farm power is one of the most expensive and critical inputs in agriculture. Why? Because it enables the different um, agricultural operations. You cannot do any agricultural operations without a source of power, without an energy to do it. Hindi lang naman kapag sinabi nating energy, we have it. Energy can exist in machines, in machineries. We can apply it in mechanization. Agricultural mechanizations requires power and energy inputs. Take note for that. Agricultural mechanizations aims to increase agricultural productivity and lessen drudgery. Okay. Human and animals, and of course machines, are all used as sources of power in agricultural productions. So maniwala ka man kayo o hindi, labor is a type of farm power. In every farm operations, it requires a certain amount of work or energy to complete the operations. Okay? So when this is undertaken over time, it is called power. So I'll give you an example. You do a work, okay, in an specified time. For example, binding a book in a specified time. So that work divided by this second, okay, over time, for example, that is your power. That is your power to do it in binding this um, kind of work. So the more shorter you are going to do it, the more power you have. The more longer you do it, the work, like for example, the binding of book, the lesser power you have. Okay? Because it is a division. Pag mas malaki, sasabihin na lang natin, this is a denominator. If habang tumataas itong part na ito, yung denominator, lumiliit yung value mo, the 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 result of your division operation. So that is the sense of power. It is the work over time. So when work energy is in J or joule, okay, and time in T is in second, then J over 2 is equal to P or power. Or tawag dito is joule over second, or in short, it is watts. Watts in SI unit, while HP or mechanical horsepower is in English system. So these are the standard unit of power in terms of watt and in terms of HP. Watt in SI and HP in English system. I will show you later on how they manage 1 HP is equivalent to 745.7 watt. Or take note for this that 1 horsepower is equivalent to 745.7 watt. Or sometimes may nakikita kayo that 1 HP is equivalent to 0.746 watt. And it is just a conversion, right? So another example is 2 HP is equivalent to 1491.4, which is 1491 is just a multiplied, is just the product of 1 HP times 2, which is 1 HP is 745.7 watts. Anyway, I'm just making it complicated. 1 HP is equal to 745.7. All right. Classifications of tractive or classifications of agricultural operations. We have two classifications. We have the tractive for work and the stationary work. Tractive work requires a motion. The operation requires a movement from one place to another place. Okay? An example for these agricultural operations that land preparation, plowing, okay, harrowing, land leveling. Land leveling is yung tinatawag natin sa Ilocano na um, yung tatanggalin natin, nakalimutan ko. Yung tatanggalin natin yung mga ano, yung tawag natin kuliglig, agkuliglig sa ating taniman ng palay. Harrowing, ang harrow sa Ilocano is gurit. Okay, gurit. So, para makagawa tayo ng sa Ilocano na gurit, we have to move, for example, an animal draft, a carabao, from one point to another, from one end, okay, to another end of the farm parcel. Okay? Cultivation. Well, of course, harvesting, okay? Yung manual harvesting, yung ginagamit natin yung sickle, kumpay sa Ilocano, no? Transporting, okay, wherein we place our harvest in our truck, okay? Transportation truck. And this truck moved from Ilocos Norte, for example, to Manila. So that is tractive work. The second classifications of agricultural operations that stationary work, which is of agricultural operation that do not require motion. For example, threshing. So yung threshing, it is designed as stay at one place, okay? And we will just place the harvest from the field and place it to only one place. Water pumping, hindi naman gumagalaw yung water pump. Milling, okay? Okay, let's move on to the power of sources. Sources of power and energy. So first is human power. Okay? Mature human being in good physical conditions and well-fed and working in favorable environment can develop an output of 0.10 HP. It is considered as poor source of mechanical power. Well, of course, napapagod naman tayo. No? Ang bilis natin mapagod, may limitations, because we are rational. We are rational. We are created by our supreme being, our God, that we are rational. Na kapag naka-feel na tayo ng hirap, for example, yung buto natin, merong arthritis, for example, feeling natin nakakapagod na because the nerves will send that masakit to. Kapag itutulad natin sa mga mechanical power, for example, threshing, kahit umiinit na, napapainit na, basta merong maximum na hindi siya sasabog, nagwo-working pa rin siya. Okay? Compared sa human being that we are rational being, wherein if we feel a faster beat in our heart, then we tend that we are tired already. And we really do. Di ba? We really do. So we are considered as poor source of mechanical power. Okay? As its rational being is most suited for operations, which requires judgments and skill. So, aside from this disadvantage of human power, no, of being a rational being, there is an advantage also, which is being a rational, we are fitted to work in judgment and skills. For example, the best example is that we created machines, di ba? And that is the result of our rational being. And while we created this machine, we also let ourselves operate this machine. We make ourselves with easier job, no? With easier job. So yeah. So human power, okay? There are various tasks actually in the agricultural operations in our uh, past decades, in our ancient times. It is operated by human. The source of power is primarily human power. But of course, they realize that there is a limitations on their power, on the output. So they begin to develop different machines like machines on or different types of irrigation. Okay, for example. So there are various tasks for now that are undertaken by human power. Land preparation. Well, of course, we also use hand tractor, but it is operated by human being. Okay. Plant establishment. There are already um, machines, okay, technologies in establishing plants, no? Pest controls. Kahit meron tayong mga power sprayer, it is still operated by human being. Crop harvesting and transporting, well, of course, the intervention of human being is still there. But in this modern era, we tend to combine the different sources of power. Okay? So grain processing is still the same. So in some instances, manual labor is still more efficient. Especially sa mga developing countries like the Philippines. Ano pa ba yung mga developing countries natin? Myanmar, etc. Ayaw kong mag-state dito, baka mamaya. Sinasabi ko diyan, hindi pala sila developing countries, which is, I guess, the focus of every country now is to be a developed countries like the US, the Russia, the Italy, Japan. So, one man is capable of shifting between 2 to 3 cubic meter per soil per day, or in tillage term, okay, about 60 square meter per day. Or it can approximately 160 persons days to till 1 hectare. So, ganon karami, ganon ka-intensive yung manual labor. Next type of powers that draft or animal power, which most of our farmers in the Philippines relies on this draft or animal power. Draft or work animals can develop an output of zero point 0.7 to 1.3 HP. A horse, based on an experiment conducted by James Watt of Scotland, lift 550. Ito, 550 pound at the rate of 1 feet per second. So, kaya niya daw i-lift to, okay, in 1 feet height in a duration of 1 second. So, from this one, no, the work done is equivalent to the force that is lifted times the velocity, which is the velocity is 1 feet per second. Resulted to a 550 feet pound per second is equivalent to 33,000 feet pound or foot pound per minute or equivalent to 0.746 kilowatt. This is the reason why 1 horsepower is equivalent to kilowatt. What happened to this one? I will just give you a brief discussion. What is in joule per second? Joule is in Newton meter. Newton is in kilogram meter per second. So from this one, it's involved weight and mass and force. That's why one that's how they develop a conversion from 1 HP to a 0.746 kilowatt. Huwag na tayo pumunta deeper. Sabihin ko na lang papyaw yung part na yon. There is also a study conducted by various actor in power source and energy. They compared between Carabao and cattle in terms of draft, yung kilogram na kanyang buhatin, in terms of their weight and their speed, and how much they give power. So if you observe from this one, the load, no, the load is increasing. While the load is increasing, both of Carabao and cattle is increasing also. So this means that habang tumataas yung load na hinihila ng Carabao and cattle, it requires also a heavier animal, a heavier ruminant, Carabao and cattle. And also, in terms of speed, makikita natin dito that there is a small differences while the speed, okay, habang tumataas yung load, konti lang yung pagbaba sa Carabao. Pero kapag pagkumparahin mo yung Carabao cattle on the initial, mas mabilis talaga mag-work yung cattle. But the advantage of Carabao, in terms of heavier, hindi yan tumatagal. Or in terms of speed, hindi yan tumatagal. Na-maintain niya yung speed niya. While the cattle, if the load is increasing, bumabagsak yung speed niya. The same as true with the HP, kung mapapansin natin habang tumataas yung load, yung Carabao, mas nagbibigay siya ng power compared sa cattle. So what this means? It means that in terms of lighter job, cattle is preferred in terms of speed in HP. But in terms of heavier job, mas prefer natin yung Carabao. That's why sometimes sinasabi natin, Carabao is better than cattle. Or most of our farmers is using Carabao over the cattle. Because cattle has a greater limitation. Okay? Tingnan ninyo guys. Nakikita ninyo itong part na ito. Kahit tanungin niyo yung ano. There is a scientific basis. Another ones that out from this lecture, na-observe ko lang and then sa tanong-tanong ng mga farmers. No? Sabi nila, mas namamaximize daw yung Carabao, yung trabaho kapag malamig yung panahon versus yung cattle. Yung cattle, kapag malamig yung yung panahon, mas bumabagsak daw. yung trabaho niya. Okay? And also, cattle has more tawag nito. Mas mataas yung kanyang mm, mas mataas yung kanyang resistance sa init. Kaya kung papansinin ninyo, yung mga father natin, yung mga lolo at lola, tatay, o nanay, may mga nanay kasi, di ba? If they are going to till land or to do or create a furrow, and they have a carabao, a draft, mas pinipili na early morning or later in the afternoon. Kasi, yung carabao, medyo mas mababa yung kanyang resistance in terms of um, that lower temperatures, in terms of lower temperatures. So, what are the advantages of using animals? Includes cheap maintenance cost. Well, they are um, tawag nito. They are ruminants. So, everywhere may mga damo naman, di ba? And we also use the rice straw, corn straw to feed them. We can also have a multi-purpose use of meat and milk. Na kapag pwede natin silang ibenta, pwede natin silang katayin, okay, for meat production and also for milk production. Pero dito sa Ilocos Norte, wala yan eh. Di ba? Inaalagaan natin yung mga um, sa Ilocano ng Carabao is Nuang. Inaalagaan natin na parang member na siya ng family. Ganon kaalaga ng mga Ilocano. So kapag pinapanood mo to, hindi ka Ilocano, magmahal ka ng Ilocano. Maalaga yan. Yung kalabaw ka pa kaya, naalagaan ng mabuti, ikaw pa. Yun. So, self-replacement kasi they are also a mammal. Okay? They produce offspring. Manure productions na pwedeng gawing fertilizers. Diba? So, what are the disadvantages of draft and annual power? Well, of course, kapag may advantage, may disadvantage din. Animals have limited daily working hours. Animals need feeding and protection against pests and disease. May mga namamatay. And also guys, take note for that hindi lang sa pest and disease. We have also to protect them from climate uncertainties, storms, drought, temperature extremities. Slow, mabagal. Production niya, di ba? High man to power ratio. Kasi talagang draft or animals are not rational being. They do whatever they want to do. And they act whatever they have designed to do. Create sila para hindi maging rational. If you feed, kakain sila. Pag pinabayaan mo, magiging wild sila. Those are the limitations. So, you have to be as a controller of this animal. You have to do the job in tawag ito. So that the job of the animal is well and good. Quality, kumbaga. Limited range of working conditions. No? Yun nga, sinasabi ko sa inyo, temperature extremities. Okay? Animals require training. Well, of course. Nung bata ako, may alaga kaming cattle, baka. Di ba, yung carabao nasasakyan yan. Yung mga hindi training na cattle, hindi yan nasasakyan, di ba? Nasubukan ko pa atang nahulog. Sakit kaya? Pag walang nagka-catch ka, pag nahuhulog ka. tapos bato. Ouch! Di ba? Ang sakit. One animal takes 7 to 8 days to plow 1 hectare and cost up to $500. So, take note for this, 7 to 8 days to plow 1 hectare. Yung kanina sa manpower, mas marami, di ba? So, mas maganda pa rin gumamit ng animal and draft. So, next will be electricity. Pag electricity yung iniisip natin, yung mga, pag electricity na topic natin, yung mga naiisip natin, cooperatives, like here in Ilocos Norte Electric Cooperatives. Nag-aaway-away yung mga, yung management, for example, or yung mga pro-INEC at saka mga anti-INEC. Kapag nawala yung electricity, nagwawala tayo. Di ba? Hindi ko naman sila kinukutya, no? Or I'm not judging anyone. The bottom line for this one is, we already rely our life without electricity is chaos, di ba? Electricity is very important in this modern era. Ang hirap. Ang hirap walang cellphone, walang ligo, di ba? Walang TV, ewan ko, walang internet. And this is patalastas lang to. No? Meron din ako nabasa in the earliest of electricity, um, they are worried on the effect of electricity. Pero ngayon, tingnan ninyo na fully developed na yung electricity. We cannot live without electricity. Ang sabi noon, we will die with electricity. Nung the early development of electricity. But now, no, when it is fully developed, electricity has already various sources. We can't live without electricity. Get nga. And also, electricity can also use as a source of power in the farm. Electricity supplies power for lighting buildings, no? For heating and for operating water pumps, refrigeration equipment. Take note that food processing is still agriculture. Electric motors provide stationary power for various agricultural operations. So this is very important. One of the very important source of power is electricity. What are the advantage and disadvantage of this electricity? The advantage is first, it is cheap source of power. It is very neat. It cannot contaminate products. It can be used at different times for various services. Basta meron kang access sa electricity, you can use in different times at different various services. It is easy to operate. Sabi noon, mamamatay ka dahil yung operation niya. Na kuryente. Di ba? Ang hirap kaya. Ground pa lang, iiyak na tayo. Ano kaya yung 220 volts? Yung ground pa lang ka, Di ba? Yun sa 220, paano na kaya? Hindi ko pa nasubukan, pero sa ground, talagang gulat na ako. Tandaan niyo I'm an engineer at I still shocked with this ground. Diba? Yung parang may kumakagat na wala naman. Pero na-experience natin kung minsan. And there is a explanation for that. Na kahit walang existing electricity, kapag you are fully positive charge, and the other one is, I guess, fully positive or negative charge din. Kapag nagdidikit kayo, merong spark. Yan yung totoong spark. Diba? So, but in agricultural farm operations, it is quoted as easy to operate. It saves labor. It aids fast operation and increased productivity. It supplies is dependable, especially in developed countries. What are the disadvantages? It is dangerous if carelessly handled. Ito na yung sinasabi ko sa inyo. No? Sa mga sources ng power, sa mga cities, may mga namamatay na mga lineman. And also in agriculture. Take note for that. It is not always regular, especially in developing countries. Okay. The source is sometimes um, unavailable. Lalong-lalo na kapag mga storms, mga months or seasons of storms. May mga nasisirang mga poste. So, it is not regular sometimes. Lalo, sa Pilipinas, for example. Kasi kapag may mga storms, malalakas na storms, may mga times na 7 days or 1 week. Or worse na na-experience ko is a month na walang kuryente. Mag-away-away yung mga tao kapag gano'n. Kasi napaka-rely tayo sa current, di ba? Napaka-rely tayo sa current. Nagre-rely tayo talaga. Our lives relying on current. The maintenance cost may be high, okay? Because kapag maglalagay tayo, for example, a very remote place, kailangan natin maglagay ng connection. So, ayan. It can cause hazard. It cannot be widely used in field operations. I-correct ko lang yung 5 hazard. It can cause hazard. Hazard yan, guys. But because, yun yung sinasabi natin advantage kanina. Sige, discuss natin mamaya. Another is the solar energy. Okay. Solar energy has been in use throughout the world, mainly for drying and heating. But there is a lot of new dimensions of applications include electricity generations, space cooling, refrigeration, and water pumping. Yun nga, um, it can generate electricity. So, from this, using the solar energy and electricity, that solar energy, we can convert that to electricity. We can now operate with those remote farm areas. But because there is a high investment cost, lalong-lalo na nung early solar panels yung naglalabasan, ang mahal. Mahal. The commercial use of these modern technologies has yet been limited. Kaya hindi masyadong nag-adapt. The energy received from the sun per unit of time on the normal surface at the average distance between the sun and earth outside the earth's atmosphere is equal to 1,353 watt per square meter. Kaya na nang ilawan yung isang bahay. Okay. So, ito siya. So, from this total solar radiation, di naman agad-agad na direct na pupunta sa ano. Pag direct to, nako, ang init-init na. This will be scattered. Some will be scattered to the space. Some will be absorbed by the atmosphere. Some will be absorbed by the clouds. And the rest will be a direct radiation. And then these clouds can emit also a diffuse radiation. And it can also reflect to the space. And this absorbed by Earth has reflect some and absorb most of this radiation. Ito na yung pwede nating i-convert into power, into energy, so that we can use for agricultural operations. There are applications, classifications. We have thermal or heat-based applications. These rely on heat energy coming from the sun. The heat energy can be used directly to heat or cool systems or be transformed to other forms of energy such as mechanical and electrical. Ang tawag doon ay thermal or heat-based application. We have also a photovoltaic applications. This rely on the illumination spectrum intensity coming from the sun with the aid of semiconductor material, e.g. solar cells. The illumination is transformed directly into electricity. So gagamit siya ng isang solar panel, for example. Uh, Actually, mas applicable yung photovoltaic application in terms of generation of electricity. Pero pag gagamit ka lang ng solar energy to dry and heat a certain crops, then use a thermal or heat-based application. Yung dito sa thermal or heat applications, if you are going to create electricity, you are based on the heat. Okay? You have to, or you have a generator that will transform heat to electricity. Wherein a photovoltaic applications, you are relying on the illumination spectrum intensity coming from the sun to create an electricity, which is you are using a solar panel, a black body. What are the advantages? It is free. Solar or radiation is free, but the conversion is very costly, very expensive. It is easily available. It is a neat source of power. The disadvantages is high investment. Yun nga. Mahal-mahal ng panel. Solar panel. It is only available during the day. It can be adjusted or stored. Its supplies cannot be controlled. Well, it is a natural resources, actually. Excess of it can cause transpiration and evaporation because it is a radiation. It is type of heat that causes evapotranspiration. It fluctuates in supply. We have a poor radiation during wet season. Maraming clouds, di ba? Meron kaming naka-install dito sa college namin, sa College of Agriculture, Food, and Sustainable Development under our school MMS unit. Solar, naka-direct yung solar to the pump. Nangyayari kapag umuulap, humihina yung pagbigay niya ng electricity. So, ang nangyayari is that humihina din yung pag-pump ng water of the pumping. Okay? So, it relies. So, ang pinakamaganda doon is gagawa kami or bibili kami ng battery. Wind energy. Okay, the next power is wind energy. Wind was another early source of power used to multiply the productive capacity of the human muscle. It has served a variety of purposes like pumping water, grinding grains, and generating electricity. An example for this one is the windmill in Burgos, Bangi, Pagudpud. Meron pa ata sa Pagudpud. So that windmill is designed to develop or to transform wind energy into electricity. Electrical energy. Pag gusto nyo ng exact. Another example is if you see something sa ating pag pumupunta kayo ng mga farms, no? May nakikita kayo doon na parang windmill. But that's not a windmill. It's actually a wind pump. Pag ikukumpara ninyo yung propel niya, yung kanyang mga galamay, yung windmill mas maliit. Mas konti, 3 lang. Yung mga nakikita natin mga wind pump, mas madami. Because the more na marami yung kanyang galamay, for example, or galamay, mas malakas because wind pump relies on the force that he is using. Kumpara sa windmill, kapag mas maliit, mas mabilis. Mas konti, I should say. Mas mabilis. So, kahit mabagal yung wind pump, basta kaya niyang i-pump yung water because it relies on force. Electricity generation, it relies on the speed. So, take note for that. The right side of, or the figure shows the different types of wind rotors. Wind rotors pala yung tawag doon. The experimental result shows that a windmill having 3.6 diameter wheel mounted on 12-meter tower is able to produce from 0.1 to 0.9 HP, with the wind velocity varying from 6.4 to 37 km per hour. Thus, the average capacity of a windmill would be about 0.50 HP. So take note for it is one of the cheapest source of farm power available in the country. So, what are the advantages, okay, and disadvantages of solar energy? I'm sorry. This is for wind energy. I'm sorry. This is for wind energy. So, advantages of wind energy is it is cheap. It is a natural resources. No? It is available everywhere because there is a wind. It can serve as alternative to electricity. But take note for this. Hindi dahil may wind, feasible na yung sources as wind. What I mean is, you cannot create a windmill or a wind pump in urban areas. Most of the locations, sabihin na lang natin, most of the locations is available. Particularly on barren areas, on agricultural areas. The disadvantages of wind energy is its supplies depends on the force of wind. Yeah. That's what I want. I want to say na dahil there is a specified wind speed para makapag-create or makapag-rely ka sa wind. It is limited to certain farm operations, wind pump, stationary. Hindi natin pwedeng gawin sa mga tractive force or tractive activities. It cannot be stored unless you have to develop an electricity. You can store that electricity. But in terms of wind, you can't. It is difficult to control. For example, you have a strong wind developed by or given by a strong storm. Efficiency is highly varied. Next power is the hydraulic power or tawag natin is water power. The movement of masses of water is a form of kinetic energy which can be converted into mechanical energy through the use of water hills or water turbines. Or in general, two types of water masses movement can be used as the falling and flowing of streams of water through the force of gravity. Pwede natin gamitin yan. Falls, for example. And the rise and fall of tides through lunar, solar, and solar gravity. So, pwede natin gamitin. Meron nga akong nakita, no, na napanood sa YouTube. They are developing the tidal force or they are transforming the tidal force into a renewable electricity. Ganyan yan, gaganon yung mga yung mga technology. Then from the movement from that, it creates electricity through a generator. And that's technology. And that's water power. Well, hindi na um, hindi na rare, okay, or alam na natin na yung mga flowing of river is already existing sa ating country. Ayan. I'm sorry. Hydraulic rotating primer movers. One is water wheel includes overshot wheel, breast wheel, and undershot wheel. Meron din tayong tinatawag na tube wheel, tub wheel, water turbines yun, Francis, Pelton, Nagler, Kaplan, Michel, or Banki, and Plato turbines. There are a lot of different types of turbines. I will not show you na lang. I will just give some samples of this or the names of this. We have also hydraulic rams, hydraulic air compressor. So these are the different types of water power. The advantage of this is first, renewable, emission free, because it's water. Adjustable, it can create lakes, lalong-lalo na yung mga dams, small water compounding projects, faster developed land. Ang disadvantage dito is impact on fish, limited plant locations, higher emission costs, carbon and methane emissions, susceptible to droughts, and flood risk because of it uses water. The next source of power is the so-called biomass energy, which is talagang talamak ngayon talaga ito. No? It's very napapanahon. It's under research and development. Biomass refers to all organic materials that originate from living organisms such as wood, agricultural residues, no, animal waste, and others. Large proportions of biomass, mainly fuel wood, is being used in developing countries. For example, biogas. This animal waste, livestock waste, can be input to an anaerobic digester or even a crops. A waste, water from septic tank, for example. Food waste, yung mga basura natin, yung mga tira-tira. So we can feed to an anaerobic digestion. And then through so-called biogas digestion or biogas creation, magkakaroon ng biogas yan and digested. Magsaseparate yung biogas in terms of methane, different gas. It is a renewable na pwede natin gamitin for heat and electricity. The best example for this one is a poultry or a piggery. Yung livestock waste niya, nilalagay niya sa aerobic digester. Pinagseseparate niya yung biogas and the digestate. Sorry. And ginagamit niya yung biogas first pang heat sa mga livestock or if the system has a generator, it will generate electricity that give light to the poultry or the piggery during night. Or this biogas can be also used as biomethane for fuel of um, car, automobile. Okay? It can also use as gas grid. And this digestate can be used as fertilizer, soil amendments, and also used as livestock bedding. So hindi na lang siya power sources, which is biogas. It is also a renewable agricultural inputs, renewable resources for different purposes. Okay? Ito, example niya, no? Ito yung baka, the cattle. And this is the example of a biomass energy plant. We can have a lot of sources of biomass available for energy. We have the livestock manure, cattle, pigs, poultry, crop residue. That's one of the best example because crop residue now is very critical because most of our farmers burning these crop residues on farm, which is against a law na hindi dapat tayo burn ng mga ganyan. Okay? Meron ng ano yan eh. Meron ng I guess national, local, regional laws na bawal ang mag um bawal yung mag-burn ng mga crop residues. Kahit pa nga yung mga sa ating backyard hindi dapat. Diba? Pero marami pa rin mga hindi sumusunod. And my family is one of them. Diba? Fuel wood, ipilipil hardwoods, sugar crops for ethanol productions, rural and municipal waste, septic tanks, aquatic plants, energy farms, fast-growing trees, oil, and hydrocarbon crops. Sosis scrofa, Sosis domesticus, baboy. Baboy. In short, baboy. There are two types of conversion. We have the thermochemical conversion. Dito yung tinatawag na gasification. Downdraft gasifiers, updraft, and fluidized bed. We can also classify into pyrolysis and carbonization, and then combustion, papainitan. Pero it contributes to heat na naman yan. Another one is biochemical conversion, ethanol production, biogas production, aerobic digestion. So, dito, yung biochemical, it's naturally separated into a vacuum. Okay? Vacuum, yung digester. Nag-i-stay doon, tapos nagse-separate yung methane and yung physical uh, yung manure. Kasi alam nyo kapag yung dumi, for example, kapag nasa-separate yung methane, wala nang amoy. Pag meron, pero I guess hindi na gaya ng dati. There's something on the heat na nagpapabaho talaga sa dumi. The advantages of biomass, low maintenance cost, easy to transport, good for outdoor operation without any additional enclosure, cheaper and good for small farmers, and less space. Environmental friendly. Wait lang, mali ito. Mali ito. This is not the advantages. Kaya lang ha. Mali yun kasi environmental concerns. Okay. Nawala yung slide. The advantages of biomass energy is environmentally friendly. Kapag meron na yung system diyan, meron ka ng libreng input. Meron ka ng libreng input. Hindi mo na kailangan bilhin kasi basura lang naman yung ito. Those are the advantages. The disadvantages is it's not based on my research. It's not economically viable. Sometimes kasi the return is very little in the Philippine setting. But based on the different countries, it is already earning ang napanood ko pa sa YouTube, Israel is already is already recycling septic tank water, and then they use this water, hindi naman sa drinking, no? They use for agricultural productions. O, di ba? Ang ganda. Kasi yung ginagamit nila for septic tank, they use, again, into agricultural inputs. First, irrigation, and second is fertilizer. So, ang galing kasi they have a competitive professionals. Malay nyo, isa sa inyo magde-design ng ganun. Diba? So, for the next source of power is heat engines, small engines. Engines are mechanical devices that convert heat energy of fuels into mechanical energy. There are two types of combustion engines, the external engines and the internal engines, wherein the former one is the fuel is ignited and burned outside the cylinder, and the heat energy is applied indirect to a piston by an intermediate medium, usually water vapor. A steam engine is an external combustion engine. Konti na lang yung gumagamit dito. The next one is the internal combustion engine na tinatawag na ICE. The fuel is ignited and burned inside the cylinder, and the resulting explosion causes an instantaneous application of pressure to a piston. For example, ito. This is the cylinder. And andito yung piston na sinasabi ko. On top of this, no, dito pumapasok yung fuel, and then mayroon ding spark, for example, or the different. For example na lang natin yung gasoline. Pag spark yan, masusunod yung gasoline. So, ang resulta, magkakaroon ng mataas na pressure dito sa baba, result na ibababa ni piston, magbababa yung piston. Pero since merong malakas na force din dito, babalik siya. Tawag doon ay yung crankshaft dito sa baba. So habang pumuputok dito sa taas, gumaganon siya. Na nagcreate siya ng isang linear motion, and then because of the crankshaft, kino-convert niya itong linear motion into a circular motion. Pak, ha, hindi plok-plok. Charot. Joke. So, that is the ice. And the resulting explosion causes an instantaneous application of pressure to a piston. Internal combustion engines have completely replaced the steam engine for all types of agricultural power applications. Madami na. Konti na lang yung gumagamit ng AC. They are used as a stationary power source of milling, grinding, water pumping, generation of electricity, etc. They are used as power units of portable farm equipment such as sprayer, thresher, and self-propelled machines such as tractors, combined harvesters, etc. A great number of them are mounted on tractors. Tractors can classify into two-wheel tractor, hand tractor, compact four-wheel tractor, combination wheel type, and track type. Nakikita niyo dito. Track type or crawler, combination wheel type and track type. So, ito yung mga sinasabi ko dito. Hand tractor. Kung minsan, merong four-wheel tractor, naka-hitch. Makikita niyo dito. This is a small engine, heat engine, and this is heat engine. These are the parts of a SI or the spark ignition engine. We have the main engine components. We have the cylinder. Ayan, this is the cylinder block, the cylinder head, the bulbs, the piston. Meron ding piston dito, no? Piston. Yan yung nagmo-move back and forward. backward, forward, backward, upward, downward, upward. Connecting rod, the crankshaft, ito yung nagko-convert ng circular or linear to circular movement. Piston rings, yan, piston rings, para smooth yung pag-move niya. Flywheel, also. We have also the crankcase. Yung flyway, yung mataas, yung, alam niyo yung kapag nakakakita kayo ng small, yung gasoline engine tsaka yung mga diesel engine, alam niyo yung malaking, parang ang bigat buhatin, that is a flywheel. Crankcase, intake manifold, exhaust manifold, ito yung mga intake and And then, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, intake, maglalagay ng gasolina, spark, susunugin yung gasolina. Pag sunog dito, pag putok dito, magkakaroon ng mataas na pressure resulting to bababa ito. So, paulit-ulit yan, paulit-ulit din na pataas, pababa, pataas, pababa. In the operations of internal combustion engines, 4 events repeatedly takes place inside the combustion chamber, one after the other in a definite order. These cycle events are the following. First is intake, yung pagbigay niya ng gasolina. Compression, i-compress nito para magkaroon talaga ng compressed volume. Okay? And then power, yung i-ignite niya, yung gasolina. So kapag meron kang compressed volume, tapos pag ignite mo pa lang, paano na kayong pressure? Napakalakas na yung pressure. That resulted na bibiglain niya pababa. Diba? May drama. Ngayon, pag sunog yon, magko-close to, i-open yung exhaust para ilabas niya yung usok, para hindi mag-stay yung usok dito. Kasi masisira eh. Then uulitin niya, pak, 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 pak. Brum, 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 brum. Ganon. Diba? So there are different classifications of engines. First is based on the manner of igniting the fuel. So again, there are different classifications of engines. First, based on the igniting the fuel. First is the electric ignition engine. This engine utilizes an electric spark. Yun yung sinasabi nilang spark plug. Produced by spark plug. Yan. Located inside the combustion chamber to ignite the compressed air and fuel mixture. Fuel use is gasoline, and metering is done by a device called carburetor. Another type based on the igniting the fuel is called compression injection ignition engine. This engine utilizes the heat of compressed air to ignite the fuel as it is being injected inside the combustion chamber. Fuel use is diesel and metering is accomplished by the fuel injection system. The advantage of compression ignition engine compared to electric ignition engines that compression ignition engine is not hindi siya in terms of safety kasi hindi masyadong nag-iinit yung makina dito sa sa pag-spark. Compared mo dito sa spark, talagang sasabog talaga yung mixture. Sasabog talaga yung mixture. So next, classification of engines based on the stroke. May tinatawag tayong 4-stroke cycle engines requires 4 movements of water of the piston to complete the cycle. For example, this is a cylinder. This is the piston. Compress. Compress. Sige, imagine na lang natin na malaking with piston to. Compress. Pataas. This is the piston. Compress. One movement. Ano yung isa? Nakalimutan ko, sorry. Mali, mali. So, pag intake niya, isang compress na yan, isa. Tapos, pag power niya, pangalawa. Pag compress pala, intake, isa, movement. Tapos, compression, pangalawang movement. Power, power, pangalawa, pangatlo. And then exhaust, first stroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mali ata. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sa two-stroke, yung dalawang operations mangyayari sa isang stroke lang. Intake and compress magsasabay yan. Okay? Mali. Mali. Yung intake tsaka exhaust magsasabay yan. Intake, exhaust. Intake, habang nag-i-intake ng diesel, ng gasolina, I should say, nakikisabay yung pag-exhaust. Tapos yung compression, tsaka power, habang kino-compress pa lang, pina-power na. Boom! Pak! So, intake, exhaust, compress, power. So, two-stroke. Kaya, ito yung patunay kung bakit yung RS100 masyadong naasok. Okay? Because nagsasabay, umiitim yung loob ng cylinder. Kaya gumawa sila ng four-stroke para paghiwa-hiwalayin yung different operations. So that is the difference of four-stroke cycle engines and two-stroke cycle engines. And we have four different types of engine. We have the four-stroke cycle spark ignitions engine, the four-stroke cycle compression ignition engine, the two-stroke cycle spark ignition engine, and the last one is two-stroke cycle compression engine. We have also the auxiliary systems, fuel systems, okay? Kaya may tinatawag tayo na FI sa mga motor. Fuel injection. Kasi kino-control. Kasi alam nyo ang disadvantage, isasabihin ko na lang, the disadvantage of an heat engine is that the fuel efficiency is very, very low. Tandaan nyo yan, ha? Very, very low. Yung pag-gas nyo, ang ina-allocate niya lang, yung tawag nito, yung pag-travel mo, less than 20%. Actually. Okay? Kumbaga yung pagsunog niya ng gasolina, mas marami yung nasasayang kaysa yung na-allocate niya on the system. That's the problem of heat engine. Napakababa. Pero hindi nila ino-open yan. Electrical system, because of the spark plug, no? Valve system, four-stroke cycle engines only, kasi may dalawa. Cooling system, para hindi mag-break yung cylinder. Lubrication system, the governing system. So, part lahat ng yan. There are a lot of definitions here to define and to discuss about heat engine. And I'll give you a pahapyaw wherein first the indicated mean effective pressure. It is the average net pressure on the piston during the power stroke. Okay. Indicated horsepower, it is the total horsepower generated in the cycle and received by a piston. We have also so-called brake horsepower. It is the power available at the crankshaft. It is measured using a suitable dynamometer. Brake mean effective pressure. This is calculated from the brake horsepower of the engine. Mechanical efficiency, it is the ratio of the brake horsepower to the indicated horsepower. We have also the volumetric efficiency. It is the ratio of the actual weight of air inducted by the engine during the intake stroke to the theoretical weight of air that should have been inducted by filling the piston displacement volume with air at atmospheric pressure and temperature. We have also a specific fuel consumptions. It is the quantity of fuel consumed by an engine on the basis of its horsepower hour performance. But this is very important to know the feasibility of the engine, for example. Thermal efficiency is the ratio of horsepower output of an engine to the fuel horsepower. What are the advantages of this heat engine? Renewable energy sources. Baliktad, guys. Okay, what are the advantages of heat engine? Ito siya. Okay? Low maintenance cost, easy transport kasi na mabagbagkat, or in that's Ilocano term, na ano na tawag nito. Natra-transport siya kasi maliit lang siya. Okay? Easy transport, good for outdoor operations without any additional enclosure, cheaper and good for small farmers. Less space. Disadvantage is environmental concerns because of the heat emitted to the environment. Low fuel efficiency, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, and not a renewable. Okay, let's move on to the, before we end this this video lecture, I just want to move on to the advantage